thank you very much for having Label Insight to Frank and the team. I'm excited to be here and tell you a little bit about what we do and talk a lot about product data transparency. I think Frank and team got the order right with Ken going in front of us because he set the stage really nicely for me, so thanks. So at Label Insight, we consider ourselves the brains behind product data, and hopefully by the end of this talk, you'll get an understanding of what I mean by that and why we think that. Before we do that, I want to spend some time on the business case for transparency and talk and explain what we mean by that and what we're seeing in the industry. Tell you a little bit about Label Insight because I'm assuming not too many people in here have heard of us. It'd be good for me to know who's heard of Label Insight. Okay, not about what I expected. And then talk about SmartLabel, which Ken introduced a little bit, all around transparency, give you a demonstration of how one of our customers has implemented that, and then talk about our partnership with Blue and take questions. So I'm going to start with the video, which is a high-risk way to start a presentation because the video has to work and the sound has to work, so we'll see. But before this, I'm going to do a little surveying. So, I've been telling people for the past year and a half, as we've been in market talking about transparency, that consumer demand for transparency has happened overnight. And then yesterday, one of my coworkers posted this in our internal communication channel, which it's called Slack. I don't know if anyone knows Slack. All right, and he proved me wrong because it didn't happen overnight. I'm going to play this video, and then I'm going to ask you what year you thought this was in, and obviously it's from Seinfeld, so you know it wasn't last year.
There's 100 different things here. What's the difference between these two? You got propylparaben?
Got it.
You got isobutane 30?
I got isobutane 20.
Uh-huh.
You got sorbitan sesquioleate?
Got it.
I have aloe.
You got aloe? I love aloe.
Where do they make yours?
Jersey?
White Plains.
So it turns out that product data transparency has been an issue for quite a while. What year? Early 90s or late 90s? 91. Third year of Seinfeld. Did anyone remember that episode? Because I didn't remember that episode when I saw it yesterday. No one remembered it? Anyone know what propylparaben is? Okay, no one knows what that is either. All right, so anyways, the point here is I've been wrong, right? For the last year and a half. Transparency didn't just happen overnight. It's been developing for a long time, and brands, and I'm sure this video resonated with a lot of people in this room, because brands are trying to figure out what does all this stuff mean? What are all these ingredients in our products? How do we respond to consumers? How do we educate them on our products and help them get comfortable around the formulations? So setting up a little bit more around the business case for transparency. And again, none of this is going to surprise you, but it'll build on a little bit of what Ken talked about and give some color to what I'm going to demonstrate a little bit later. So, who in this room only buys products based on taste and price today? No one raised their hand. I thought there'd be one joker in the audience, so no one raised their hand, right? And convenience. And the reality is that's not how people shop anymore. No matter who you are, right? I travel a lot, and to all places around the world and in the US, and I go in and out of retailers in every city that I go into. And so when I'm in Bentonville, I go into Walmart. When I'm in Minneapolis, I go to Target. When I live in Chicago, I go to Whole Foods, Mariano's, Jewel, all of them. And because I'm in this industry, I always do the same thing. I walk into the store, I go to the end of an aisle, sometimes it's a cereal aisle, sometimes it's frozen, and I stand there and I watch people because I want to see what they're doing. I know how I shop, but I'm not representative because I work in product data, so it's not fair what I do. But what you observe is almost 50% of the people, these are my observations, they study the products. Not all with the smartphone, but they do something with the product. Most people don't just grab something and put it in their cart anymore. They take the product off the shelf, they look at it, whether it's the nutrients or the ingredients or claims. You'll see people ask for help oftentimes. Last time I was in Walmart, standing there at the edge, and in 5 minutes, 2 different people actually took a product and walked, and it was probably a little creepy. I kind of followed them because I wanted to see where they were going because they didn't put it in their basket, in their cart. And they went over and they asked an associate for help. They're trying to understand something about this product. And both of them couldn't get the answer. So what did? They went and put it back on the shelf. So this is changing, right? And It's evolving. People care about health and wellness. They want to understand what's in these products and what they mean. We've started this is a study by Deloitte, by the way, that was done in partnership with the Grocery Manufacturers Association and the Food Marketing Institute recently, a couple years ago. But there's more and more of these popping up. The other day, I saw an article that was talking about, for the first time ever, there are studies showing that consumers will buy a product where they can get data about the product, that they can understand what the product is, even if they know it's worse than an alternative product. Right? Think about that. So for the first time ever, consumers are saying, I'll buy a product that might be worse for me as long as I understand it than a product that confuses me. That's incredible. From the same study, consumers are now linking health and wellness and transparency to safety, right? In their definition of safety. And the types of questions that they're demanding answers to are not easy questions to answer. These are really difficult questions to answer. 62% are saying they want to know that the product is free of harmful ingredients. Well, what does that mean, right? What is harmful? And how many of those ingredients are there? That's really complicated to answer, just that one question. Clear and accurate labeling. I'm sure many people here are familiar with what's happening across the country, GMO labeling around food in Vermont, federal legislation that many people think will follow around GMO labeling. Many retailers have initiatives today around simple ingredients or clean label, which I'm sure many people have heard of. And then the last one here is around the degree of processing, which is sometimes real and sometimes perception, right? So consumers link that to how many ingredients are in a product. It may not be true all the time, but we think, even I think, sometimes if I have a product that has 5 ingredients and another product that has 12 ingredients, the one with 5 is better for me because I may not understand the ingredients. And it may show me a sign of how processed a particular product is. So with that as a backdrop, I want to tell you a little bit about Label Insight more because I don't, as I saw by show of hands, not that many people understand who we are, so I think it'd be helpful to understand a little bit of background. What we do is we're a product and data technology company, and we transform data that lives on packaging into over 15,000 attributes per UPC, per GTIN, automatically using technology. So I just made some big statements and people probably don't believe me, but let me explain what I mean. So if you pick any of these products, whether it's a box of Cheerios, the can of soup, or that drug product, which is a SPF moisturizer in the middle, there are nutrient labels on some of them. There are ingredient panels on all of them. And everything I've been telling you is trying to convince you that ingredients are complicated, which I probably didn't have to convince you of that. But because they're so complicated, people are trying to understand them, and what we do is we look at all that data that's on the package, and we make sense of it. So it's this translation of scientific into consumer-friendly language. And I'm going to give you some examples of that. We'll look at ingredient ordering. We'll look at what the ingredients are used for in the formulation. We'll look at if the ingredient is an animal byproduct or an animal ingredient. Does it contain certain allergens? Is it natural or artificial? Is it a preservative? Is it an added sugar? So on and so forth. And we do that using technology. This example shows you on a typical package the types of data. Everyone in this room knows it even better than I do. But what we find in our database across about 300,000 products is a typical package has somewhere around 200 points of data. So if you add up kind of the fields, right? Everyone would define a field level differently. But nutrients and ingredients, your claims, your certifications, all your description information, your romance copy, size, so on and so forth. All of that's about 200 fields or 200 points of data. And what this arrow is trying to represent is what our technology does is it takes it all and it transforms that. So a good example that I like to use is that bottom word that says tartrazine. Anyone know what tartrazine is? A couple people know what tartrazine is. Has anyone ever seen tartrazine on a label? It's on about 10% of labels. Tartrazine is a scientific name for artificial color yellow number 5. Has anyone heard of yellow number 5? Right? So that ingredient lives on packages in over 1,000 different names, just in the US. Right? So think about that. This it's really complicated data. And the way the federal legislation is today, it's okay for that, because it can live under different names. But when a manufacturer is trying to understand more about their products, or a retailer is trying to understand more about the products that they sell, then they need to understand this. Right? So when Target's saying, and I'm sure the manufacturers in this room have gotten this question from many retailers, but when Target says, we're trying to understand all the products that we sell that are defined by our definition of simple, or all the products that we sell that don't contain added sugars, or don't contain artificial preservatives or colors, this is the kind of data that they need to have in order to answer that. And our vision and our goal is to help manufacturers and retailers make this really easy. Some of the other information in there is just taken verbatim off the packaging. So you'll see things like, low sodium may be a claim, but low sodium can also be something that's defined by the FDA because it's a regulated claim. So some of this information is directly taken off the package, other is derived based on that base information. But when you add it all up, you get about 15,000 points of data per product. It's not about the 15,000, it's about what the 15,000 pieces of data can allow you as a brand owner or retailer to do with it using it as building blocks. And the reason we go to the package is, as it was talked about in several of the previous presentations, that's the single source of the truth, right? Of course, I'm not talking about the technology, because there's platforms that want to have a single source of the truth, but the real single source of the truth is that thing, in terms of what's sitting on the shelf. And that's where we go. When we started, we actually went to retailers first. We went to brands to see if they had the data, and none of the brands had the data. Retailers were asking us to help them get this data, and the only place we could get it from was the package. And even today, many of our customers tell us, well, all of our customers tell us the same thing, that they don't have all this data yet centralized. This is just a diagram in the ecosystem. If I was to draw the true ecosystem, I would need probably a whiteboard the size of the front of this room, because it's large. But it's representative of all the different players in the industry and where we sit around generating the product data. So taking that data off the package and deriving information, and then feeding it wherever it needs to go. So we're not trying to be a PIM, right? In terms of, we don't need to be the company that has all the data, because there's a lot more data than just what we do, than just the consumer data. So we develop partnerships to push it wherever it needs to go, whether it's to One World Sync, and Ken was talking about, they're the kings of distribution, right? Their platform connects to everything. So if this data needs to go into that platform, that's great. With Blue, this was a no-brainer in terms of a partnership. If our business was a factory, our raw material is the package flat or images of the finished package. And so a partnership with Blue makes a lot of sense, and we think our joint value proposition will alleviate some of the burdens that exist today on brands when they're trying to aggregate and generate this data. And then, of course, the brands and retailers, which I've talked about. And on the left-hand side, you see the government. I just want to spend a second talking about the government. One of the reasons many people have never heard of Label Insight is we spent several years working only with the government. In 2000, so the FDA was our first commercial contract, first commercial customer. In 2009, the FDA was trying to better understand trans fat in food products in the US. And they weren't able to do that because trans fat is typically not an ingredient listed on a package. It's a property of other ingredients. So people have probably heard of PHOs, or partially hydrogenated oils. Many of those contain trans fat as a property. So do thousands of other ingredients. And we had built this technology going back to 2001 that would take ingredients and kind of decode it. So they found us, and they put us to a test of giving us 5,000 products and said, show us what you can do, and we were able to do that, and that resulted in a 5-year agreement with the FDA. So for a long time, we were just inside of the government working with them around additive research, allergen research, regulatory compliance type work. And it wasn't until 2012 that we built a platform and took it into the rest of industry. So with that, I wanted to turn our attention to SmartLabel. I've talked about transparency a little bit. Ken introduced SmartLabel, I'll reintroduce it. 2 years ago, the GMA and the FMI, the associations that represent manufacturers and retailers, as well as industry, the top roughly 30 CPGs and top 10 retailers all came together and said, we have to respond to consumer pressures around transparency. And it's better if we respond because it should be done in a consistent way. It should be done in a way that gives brands and brand owners control over the information and a say in that information. And it should extend beyond the package. So the vision of SmartLabel was not just taking the information from the package and putting it online, but to extend the conversation to help consumers understand information around maybe where an ingredient is sourced, or what an ingredient is, what it means, or what it's used for in a formulation, or what a U inside of a circle means, because many people don't know that that's a certification for kosher. And so it was an opportunity to have a voice in a consistent, centralized way. And this was great for us because we're believers in transparency. We've always been, but there was never a formal initiative around transparency in the industry. So brands were trying to figure out, how do I respond to, and now SmartLabel appeared, and there was that opportunity to do so. So instead of me showing you more slides, I actually wanted to give you a quick live demo of SmartLabel. And some of you may have seen in the press that Hellmanns.com launched about a month ago. And I wanted to show you how SmartLabel works. So brands can take artwork. Here's an example of a Hellmanns product. With our partnership with Blue, this gets more efficient because brands can, the vision is brands can opt into SmartLabel and say, hey, I've approved my artwork, I want to do SmartLabel. Send it to Label Insight. But in this example, I'm just going to show you an alternate way to do it. So what a brand would do is they would take that file and they would just drag it into a portal, and it would say that this has been successfully uploaded. There's no limitation on how many files someone can put in at once. And then what happens is a brand would go through what's verification, which I'm not going to show because of time in detail, but I'll just show you what it looks like. So verification would take all of that data, those 15,000 attributes I was talking about once we derived them, and map them into the SmartLabel spec. And the SmartLabel spec has 52 mandatory requirements, things like nutrients, ingredients, allergens, and then hundreds of voluntary attributes, ingredient description, sourcing information, GMO, and things like that. So they would be able to come in here and go through a verification and either approve information or add additional information or raise flags or change the information. And we're working on projects right now where we're tying into not only Blue to get package flats, but tying into other systems where brands have already invested a lot of time and energy, whether it's their PIM or MDM or other platforms, their PLM platforms, where they may have information like ingredient description, where we could suck it straight into our platform. But the point here is they go through a verification, they can see a SmartLabel preview if they'd like to as they're making changes. But then ultimately when they approve it, their SmartLabel pages get published. And the example I'm going to show you is actually Hellmanns, because we've done work with them to integrate it into their actual Hellmanns.com site. So for them, Hellmanns has replaced all nutritional and ingredient information across their websites with SmartLabel pages because they believe it's a richer consumer experience. So there's two ways you can get to it. On their homepage, you can click SmartLabel, and it takes you to, okay, good, I'm back. It takes you to a SmartLabel kind of directory. The other way you can do it is from their homepage, you can go to products, and you can click through on a product. This is the product that I was showing you the flat for. And then you can see the SmartLabel information. You would pick a size, and instead of seeing nutrients and ingredients, you're now taken to this experience. I'm going to shrink this down a little bit just because it's optimized for mobile. So it looks a little better when I shrink it versus widescreen. But just quickly, I'll walk you through this. There's 5 tabs. Nutrition is the first tab. Then you see the rest across the top, which I'll click through. Some of the information is directly off the package into the experience. So like nutrition is straight off the package, different structure and formatting, but it's the same data. When you get into ingredients, the information gets a lot more interesting. So one of the challenges that consumers have always talked about is the ingredients, not only are they hard to read or understand, they're hard to even just see because it's a paragraph oftentimes, and you have commas and semicolons and colons and parentheses and square brackets and squiggly brackets and nested brackets, right? It's confusing. So the specification for SmartLabel allows brands to separate out their ingredients in a hierarchy. and organize them like this, which is easier to understand. And then if you were to click in on one of them, you can see what Unilever's doing, which is if you could imagine a transparency continuum, right, where brands can be somewhere on there depending on their capabilities and their interest in being transparent. Unilever's probably pretty far along that transparency curve because you can see for some of their ingredients, they're providing growing method, country of origin, geographical source, tied all the way into supply chain information. That's not a requirement, but it's something that they're doing. And you can see a description of soybean oil, which people may not understand what soybean oil is, might not be the best example, but even that you can give a consumer-friendly description of an ingredient so they understand what that might mean. Allergens, this links allergens to what we call culprit ingredients. So this is saying that it contains egg. It'll tell you the ingredients that have been flagged on the product, on the exact label, on that label for that allergen. And then they have additional links out to other sites. Under other information is where there's claims and certifications. And this isn't just about what's on the package. Again, this can extend beyond it. So when you click on claims, you'll see some of the claims and benefits of the product. And in some cases, there are descriptions. So in that first example, it'll talk about their commitment to cage-free. And today, only 50% are cage-free, but they're on a path to get to 100%. So they're using these descriptions as a way to educate their shoppers and the consumers on their products, and using it and providing information that they'd never be able to fit on a label even if they wanted to put it on there. Quickly, I'll touch on GMOs. So there's a GMO disclosure where brands can disclose non-GMO or GMO ingredients. And then the last tab is just additional links to external sites, so about the brand site, about the parent company, a link out to USDA MyPlate to understand dietary guidelines and things like that. And this page allows the brand flexibility to provide more information if they choose to. So that's one Smart Label example. I'm not going to go through more, but Smart Label has a food specification. It has a non-food specification that includes drug, personal care, beauty, all of those categories, even household items. It has a pet food specification as well, and currently developing an alcoholic beverages spec. So I showed you what the process is of dragging the images and then going through verification, and then the Smart Label page becomes live. With our partnership with Blue, there's an opportunity to streamline this process. I've talked about it a little bit. This is a visual representation of it. So brands are always saying, look, I'm investing in certain processes. I've invested in certain platforms. How do I leverage those investments? So we view our partnership with Blue as an opportunity to do exactly that. If a brand owner can approve package flat or artwork, and it could go directly into a Label Insight platform instead of having to create a separate process to get package flats in. In addition to that, there's a lot of data that currently could exist in Blue Software's platform that is valuable to brands. So as we do our work and extract data and derive information, derive attributes, there could be an opportunity to not only pull the images but push the data back into Blue. And a lot of that's still a work in progress, so more to come. So that's really it. I know we're running up against the clock, so I'm happy to open it up to questions if there are any questions.